Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna and welcome to all the devotees online. Thank you very much for your kind association and presence as we continue associating with Srimad Bhagavatam. Canto 2, Chapter 7, verses 47 and 53. We'll be completing this chapter. Schedule incarnations with specific functions. Om Jnanatmivandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshuramilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Taparakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishwakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priyam Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Ti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesa Sunyavadi Pastatari Satarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Sarva Shastra Piyusha Sarva Vedeka Satvala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnadya Sarva Lokai Pritprada Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavato Prabhu Kalidundo Didaditya Shri Krishna Parivartita O Srimad Bhagavatam, O nectar churned from the ocean of all Vedic scriptures, O most prominent transcendental fruit of all the Vedas, O you enriched with jewels of all spiritual philosophic conclusions, O you grant spiritual vision to all the people of the world, O life breath of the Vaishnava devotees, O Lord, you are the sun which has arisen to dispel the darkness of Kali Yuga. You actually, Lord Krishna, has returned amongst us. Paramananda Pathaya Prema Varshasharayate Sarvada Sarva Sevyaya Shri Krishnaya Namastute. O Srimad Bhagavatam, I offer respectful obeisance unto you. By reading you undertains transcendental bliss. For your syllables rain pure love God upon your reader. You always be served by everyone for your incarnation of Lord Krishna. Mad Ekabandhu Mad Sangim Mad Guru Mad Mahadana Mad Nishtaraka Mad Bhagya Mad Ananda Namastute. O Srimad Bhagavatam, O my only friend, O my companion, O my teacher, O my great wealth, O my deliverer, O my good fortune, O my bliss, I offer respectful obeisance to you. Asadu sadhu tadahi natini chochataraka hanamuncha kadachin mam premna ritkata yospura. O Srimad Bhagavatam, O give our saintly instance to the unsaintly, O uplifted to the very fallen. Please do not ever leave me. Please become manifest in Mahatma Trope, a company of pure love of Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Janmadyasya Yutonvayadi Tarata Charte Sobhigna Swarat Tene Brahma Hidaya Adikavaye Muyanti Yatsuraya Tejo Vari Mridam Yatha Vinimayo Yatrati Sargom Risha Damna Swena Sadani Rastakuakam Satyam Param Dhimahi. O my Lord Shri Krishna, Son of Vasudeva, O pervading personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisance unto you. I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because of the absolute truth and the primal cause of all causes of creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifest universes. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations and is independent because there is no other cause beyond him. It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji, the original living being. By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed in illusion, as one is bewildered by illusory representation of water seen in fire, land seen in water. Only because of him did material universes temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature appear factual, although they are unreal. I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna, who is eternally existent in a transcendental abode, which is forever free from illusory representation of material worlds. I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth. Rayanalpai Shasabhya Kalabasmin Yuge Jana Manda Sumanda Matayo Manda Vipadrita. O learned one in this iron age of Kali, many but short lives are quarrelsome, lazy, misguided, unlucky, and Vava always disturbed. Narayana Namaskritya Narachevam Narothamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jay Mudiraret. Before reciting Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisance to the personality of Godhead Narayan, and to Narendarayan Rishi, the supermost human being, and the Mother Saraswati, the goddess learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Savaipum soparo dharma yatho bhaktira dokshaje ahaitukya pratiyata yatma suprasiddhati. The superior occupation dharma of all humanity is that by which men can attain to loving devotional service under the transcendent Lord. Such a devotional service must be unmotivated, uninterrupted, completely satisfied as well. Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Janaya Chus Vairagyam Jnanam Chayadahitukam. By rendering devotional service under the personal Godhead Shri Krishna, one immediately acquires positive knowledge and detachment from the world. Vedanti tattva vidastatvam yajnanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti sabhyate. Learn the transcendentals to know the absolute truth called as non-dual substance, Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan. Shru Shusha Dadanasya Vasudeva Katarji Syan Mahatsevaya Vipra Punya Tirtha Nishevanat. O twice born sages, by serving those devotees completely free from all vice, great service done by such service one gains affinity for hearing the messages of Vasudeva. Shrinutam Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Yaridyanta Stoya Badrani Vidunoti Supitsatam. Shri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is Paramatma, Super Soul, in everyone's heart and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotees, develop the urge to hear his messages, which shine themselves virtues and properly heard and chanted. Nasta Prayashu Badreshu Nitam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatu Tamasloke Bhakti Bhavati Nashtiki. By regular attendance in the classes of the Bhagavatam, by rendering of service of pure devotees, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed. And loving service under the personality of Godhead, who is praised or transcendent song, is established as an irrevocable. Etavan Sankhya Yoga Bhyam Swadharmam Parinishtayas Janmalabha Para Pumsam Antenara Yanusmriti, the highest perfection of human life achieved either by complete knowledge of matter and spirit, by practice of mystic powers, or by practice, or by perfect discharge of occupational duties to remember the personal Godhead at the end of life. Akama sarvakamo va mokshakamo daririti vrena bhakti yogena yajate purusham param. A person who has broad intelligence, where they be full of all material desires, without any material desires or desirable liberation, must by all means worship the supreme whole, the personality of God. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We are continuing Srimad Bhagavatam based on the teachings of the Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, the founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Hare Krishna, and welcome back after a fairly long break. If you can remember, let us cover any feedback from the last section, Canto 2, Chapter 7, verses 36 to 46. We had a wonderful festival and engagement in Durban for Janmashtami. It's interesting, we're going to be speaking about the format of the presentation in relation to these purports that Prabhupada is going to share, and then we're going to cover in the verses 47 onwards. So let's see if anyone has any feedback. We will just read Prabhupada's power statement from verse 37. But before learning these principles of non-violence, one has to learn two other principles, namely to be humble and to be prideless. Unless one is humble and prideless, one cannot be harmless and non-violent. And after being non-violent, one has to learn tolerance and simplicity of living. One must offer respects to the great religious preachers and spiritual leaders, and also train the senses for controlled action. Learning to be unattached to family and home, and to render devotional service to the Lord, etc. At the ultimate stage, one has to accept the Lord and become his devotee. Otherwise, there is no religion. In religious principles, there must be God in the center. Otherwise, simple moral instructions are merely sub-irreligious principles, generally known as upadharma, or nearness to religious principles. So here we see in this beautiful purport, Prabhupada is not encouraging motivational speaking, which is based simply to enhance morality. This is in the category of upadharma, nearness to religious principle. It's coming, but not the focus. We see Prabhupada presented Krishna consciousness and presented Krishna directly, so that ultimately going through all these different stages of cultivating godly qualities like humility, pridelessness, non-violence, simplicity, they, respect, detachment. Ultimately, these are meant to bring to devotional service. If they're not leading to devotional service, then that is not religious principles. If it's not leading to bringing Krishna in the center. So yes, there's definitely room for encouraging people, motivating people on the basis of morality. But ultimately, we've been in this material world for billions and billions of lifetimes. And if we simply just, sidetrack Krishna, keep Krishna on the side, or remove Krishna, take out Krishna from the scriptures, then we may just keep the living entities in the cycle of birth and death again and again and again. And the pure devotee is paradukha dukhi. His heart pains to see the living entity suffering. And therefore, we want to bring Krishna into the formula. We want to bring Krishna into their life. Krishna is the missing piece. Krishna is the missing part of everyone's existence. So, therefore, bringing God in the center, bringing Krishna in the center. The Acharya Siddhi says, Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada created association devotees because association shields us and keeps us focused on the goal. Otherwise, one cannot make any advancement. Yes. Lava matra, sadhu sangha, sarva siddhi hoy. That just one moment of association with a pure devotee can allow one to achieve perfection. Srila Mahaprabhu makes this point that of all the angas of bhakti, sadhu sangha is the most important. Sadhu sangha nourishes one's devotion. Sadhu sangha keeps one protected, keeps one inspired. And even when one is a pure devotee, Srila Mahaprabhu says sadhu sangha is still the most important, even for pure devotees. It's not like, okay, now I'm a pure devotee, now I can go under, solo into a cave. No. Even when one is a pure devotee, association is a must. So just consider if it's important even for pure devotee, what to talk about those who are aspiring on this journey. Association is very, very important. Shamananda says, Hare Krishna Prabhu, verse 46, wonderfully reminding us that Krishna is for everyone. Where all is part and parcels. We need to distribute Krishna consciousness to all, regardless of so-called material designation, Indian, non-Indian, rich, poor, old, young, human or non-human, even. So, yes, what to do about all, human designations, even animals need to get Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada said, even if we make one end Krishna conscious, our mission is successful. Let's see. Please type in the chat how many animals, non-humans, have got the mercy of the pure devotees and got the mercy of the Lord that you can think of from scripture. So Madri says the whole of Jarakanda forest. Good, by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Anyone online, which other non-human devotees, aspiring devotees got the mercy? Please type in the chat. Right, the puppy. So now there were few puppies. Which puppy are you talking about, Amavati, Radhika? There were a few puppies. Right, Nimai's puppies. Good, Nimai's puppies. As Nimai as a devotee, yes. The monkeys in Ramayan, yes. Any others? The dog of Shivananda Sen, very good. Gajendra, yes. Any others? Bharat the deer, yes. He went to the ashram taking remnants of sages. The mad elephant that Rasikanandan initiated. Narad Muni has quite a few. Sukha the parrot. So Sukadev was already a pure devotee. He was Brahman realized. And yes, in one sense, you could say he got the mercy of Srila Vyasadeva and heard the Bhagavatam and thereby became a pure devotee. So could be in a category, yes. Narad Muni had a snake that the children were torturing because now they knew he's following the four regular principles. Or in fact, you could say the fifth one also, no biting. And then eventually when Narad Muni came again, Narad Muni says, so everything okay? And he says, no, not okay. They're throwing stones, they're playing, causing harm. So Narad Muni said, I told you not to bite, but I didn't say you can't raise your hoods. You can raise your hoods. So the cobra. So good. So like that, we see Krishna consciousness is for every living entity. If it's for the animals, what to talk about for the humans? And therefore, as Shamananda Prabhu says, we should give Krishna consciousness to all living entities. Now, yes, here's an interesting aspect. We meant to give Krishna consciousness to everyone. But the challenge is the souls that we're giving Krishna consciousness to are not receptive. They don't know the value of Krishna consciousness. Just like you are all here online, hearings, allocated your 2 hours on Saturday. Why? Because you understand and appreciate the value of associating with the Bhagavatam and Srila Prabhupada's Bhaktivedanta purports. So you are sacrificing your time due to appreciating the value. They don't appreciate the value. They don't know the value of Krishna consciousness. That which is most valuable, they do not recognize. So when we approach them, either giving them the book or just speaking to them or giving them some basic philosophy, it's not a once-off contact. Because you cannot convince someone by a once-off contact. Even if one is giving a book to someone, we should be taking the details and following them up. That was Prabhupada's life membership program, even in India. Visiting them. And when we visit them, it's more about, just a pulse check. Becoming friendly, giving them prasad, answering their questions, checking, did they read the book? And then gauging where they are and then giving that association, cultivating them. Without gallons of blood, we cannot cultivate souls. So once you find someone favorable, now you have to spend time and energy and cultivate them. Because they're crawling in devotional service. Once they're on their 2 feet and able to walk and run, then you go for the next soul. And in this way, we need to be able to contact souls and put energy into them, cultivate them. Otherwise, it's not possible. I normally give the example of how there's a devotee couple. We would go visit them every single day after the 4 o'clock, quarter past 4 RT in the afternoon, because in the quarter past 4 RT, Shishini Tagore in Hillbrow, the offering is fruit, I think it was shrikand, fruit, and cake, sweet. So we would take the cake, and every single day without fail, we would drive about 35, 40 minutes and deliver the prasad. And obviously have a discussion, maybe 1 hour, 1.5 hours, sometimes 2 hours, every single day. And it's interesting how initially the devotee was challenging, not accepting Krishna, challenging, but because he was getting prasad, he was very happy. And we stayed on the same street, so that way it was okay. We could still visit him. And slowly, year after year, transformation happens just by that association, by that prasad, by that discussion. Transformation happens. So we have to keep that in. We're covering 47 to 53, 2 sections, 47 to 49. Bhagwan is superior to Paramatma and Brahman. And then we're covering 50 to 53, dissemination of knowledge. Text 47. Shaswat prashantam abhayam pratibodhamatram sudam samam sad asata paramatma tattvam sabdo nayatra purukara kava kavan kriyartho maya paraitya vimukhe cha vilajamanam tad vaipadam bhagavata paramasya pumso brahmeti yad vidur ashar ajashra sukham vishokam. What is realized as the absolute Brahman is full of unlimited bliss without grief. That is certainly the ultimate phase of the supreme enjoyer, the personality of Godhead. He is eternally void of all disturbances and fearless. He is complete consciousness as opposed to matter, uncontaminated and without distinctions. He is the principle of the primal cause of all causes and effects, in whom there is no sacrifice for fruitive activities, and before whom the illusory energy, being ashamed, does not stand. The supreme enjoyer, the personality of Godhead, is the supreme Brahman or Samam Bonam, because of his being the supreme cause of all causes. The conception of impersonal Brahman realization is the first step due to his distinction from the illusory conception of material existence. In other words, impersonal Brahman is a feature of the absolute distinct from the material variegatedness, just as light is a conception distinct from its counterpart, darkness. But the light has its variegatedness, which is seen by those who further advance in the light. And thus, the ultimate realization of Brahman is the source of the Brahman light, the Supreme Personality of God, the Samam Bonam, or the ultimate source of everything. Therefore, meeting the personality of Godhead includes the realization of the impersonal Brahman as realized at first in contrast with material inebriety. The personality of Godhead is the third step of Brahman realization. As explained in the first canto, one must understand all three features of the Absolute, Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. So we already covered this understanding that the Absolute is recognized in three phases, three features. The Brahman, the initial phase, then further Paramatma, and then further Bhagavan. Bhagavan is the source of Brahman and Paramatma. And if some living entity is absorbed in the Brahman realization, that is not wrong, but it's incomplete. When they get the association of the pure devotee, they then move further up. Even those who are yogis, who are Paramatmavadis, they've realized the Paramatma, even they need association of a pure devotee to move further up. So we were talking about association. Here's again the point that someone who wants to begin spiritual life needs association. Somebody who is Brahman realized needs association of a pure devotee. Somebody who is a yogi, who's Paramatma realized needs association of a pure devotee. And when somebody is now Bhagavan realized in association of devotees, they glorify the Supreme Lord. Satatam kirtayantam. So, without association of an advanced devotee, we cannot advance in spiritual life. We are blessed to have Srila Prabhupada guiding us, giving us his association. It's inconceivable, the blessing that Prabhupada is bestowing through his Bhaktivedanta purports, through his books. It's really mind-boggling. It's inconceivable. Because he's able to guide the soul who's sincere and serious, because it requires effort to open a book. During Balaram Purnima, we're making this point that yes, the book is there. Bhagavatam is there. The Bhagavad Gita is there. It's on the shelf. But for you to pick that book up, because it's a thick book, it's a heavy book. So, you need energy to pick that book up. Then you need energy to turn the pages. Then you need energy to focus. Energy not to be distracted from your WhatsApp and Facebook and all the pinging. And where does one get that energy from? From Balaram. To keep focus. Otherwise, it's impossible. Even though the association is right there, we will not embrace it. Even as practicing devotees, what to talk about new people? Even practicing devotees, to not make the time to study and read Srila Prabhupada's books, which is of paramount of importance to nurture the devotion. Because there was absolutely no need for Prabhupada to write so many books. I mean, he could have written one book, fairly comprehensive, to the point, to the T, one book. Yeah, this is the basic, you follow this. But he took time and effort to expand on every single verse practically. From Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Sri Shopanishad, Nectar of Instruction, Chaitanya Charitamrita, you name it. Prabhupada, why? Because Prabhupada said the best of me is in my books. And why did he give himself in this form? Why did Krishna want to give us Srila Prabhupada for the future generations in this way? Because without that association, we cannot move from Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan. We need that association. And Srila Prabhupada so expertly is just taking us to Bhagavan. Express elevator. Forget the staircase. Let's go. Prabhupada continues. Pratibodha matram is a conception just opposite to that of material existence. In matter, there are material miseries. And thus, in the first realization of Brahman, there is the negation of such material inebriacies. And there is a feeling of eternal existence distinct from the pangs of birth and death, disease and old age. That is the primary conception of the impersonal. Why do we all move away naturally from miseries? Nobody comes to Krishna consciousness, to spiritual life, to a festival, to a program, spiritual program, to increase misery. Every loving entity comes there to get more auspiciousness, to reduce misery. Why? Because even the first stage of Brahman realization has absolutely no misery. It's a realm, it's an existence without misery. There is Ananda there, which we call Brahmananda, the bliss of being in the Brahman. The material world is plagued with inebriaties, difficulties, challenges. So here's 2 points. Because the material world is plagued with miseries, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Matras Pashas Tukontaya, Doshna Shukadukada. He's telling Arjuna that you have to learn to tolerate the effects of this material world, that the difficulties, the forms of suffering, the objects of senses, sense gratification. So we need to learn to tolerate. Even in relation to the body, there's so many inconveniences as one gets older. So one has to learn to tolerate. So every form of misery, suffering, in whatever form or shape that comes to us, we should see that as a friend. Jiva Goswami says suffering is a devotee's best friend. Why? When you see the suffering as a friend, teaching you to learn to tolerate. Trinadapi suni chena. One has to learn to tolerate. So what's the best way to tolerate? What's the best environment to tolerate? The material world. There's difficulties in relationships. There's difficulties in health. There's difficulties in emotional management. There's difficulties with the government. There's difficulties with other living entities. There's difficulties with natural calamities. There's difficulties everywhere. It's practically a house of difficulties. Dukhalayam. So why did Krishna make this house of Dukhalayam? Very simple. Learn to tolerate. We need to tolerate so that we can embrace the journey of spiritual life. Because without embracing spiritual life, I cannot get out of this Dukhalayam, this house of misery. But while I'm practicing, difficulties are going to come. I don't have control of them. Therefore, I learn to tolerate. I learn to cultivate tolerating, and at the same time, keeping on track, moving as quickly as swiftly as I can through the process. And while I'm going through this process, I begin to experience eternality and freedom from miseries. As my consciousness evolves, as my consciousness is upgraded, as my consciousness becomes Krishna conscious, to that degree, the suffering also becomes reduced because my consciousness is going higher. When I'm completely Krishna conscious, I am detached from this body. When I'm detached from this body and I've realized my identity, then as Bhagavad Gita, in Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says that fire does not burn the soul. Is not withered by the wind, wet by water. No, Arjuna, no weapon in your arsenal can destroy the soul. That's the nature of the soul. So as we become Krishna conscious, as we realize ourselves, we also begin to appreciate and experience this environment of no miseries. It's not just theory. It has to be practically experienced, but you can't experience it if you're not seriously practicing the process. It's interesting. Sometimes you'll hear, oh, Prabhu, that devotee is depressed, is experiencing depression. Or that devotee, left Krishna consciousness. Because the process is taking you to an environment of freedom, free from miseries. The first two stages, Srila Rupa Goswami discusses, the first two stages of sadhana bhakti is Kleshagni and Subhada. If it's Kleshagni, means freedom from all kleshas, all difficulties, and Subhada, all auspicious, how is it that someone can still be depressed or leave? Because just being in Krishna consciousness or dressing oneself as a devotee does not provide the shelter. It is about the application. You have to apply yourself to begin to experience the process. The Supreme Lord is the supreme soul of everything. And therefore, in him, the supreme conception of affection is realized. Krishna is the source of everything. And therefore, we all seeking affection. Well, if we're all seeking affection and Krishna is a source of everything, then he's also the source of affection. This conception of affection is due to the relationship of the soul to soul. A father is affectionate to his son because there is some relationship of nearness between the son and the father. But that sort of affection in the material world is full of inebriety. Note, Prabhupada is making it very clear. Yes, a son and father relationship is very wonderful, very sweet. But externally, it looks wonderful. There's some sweetness. But the underlying reality, Prabhupada is sharing. And what is the underlying reality that people don't see? But that sort of affection in the material world is full of inebriety. Even that relationship, Prabhupada is saying, is filled with difficulty. Okay, so if I'm going to have children, then I should expect difficulty, because that's the underlying challenge of relationships in the material world. We cannot fool ourselves. Yes, the more that relationship comes to a spiritual platform, and that inebriety reduces in intensity, but difficulty will be there. Consider even Krishna's parents as Devaki and Vasudev. When you get Krishna as your child, as your son, even then there's difficulty. And we made the point. Why is the difficulty there? We see that very classically in the example of Devaki and Vasudev. They tolerated the difficulty to allow Krishna to appear in this world for the welfare and benefit of the whole universe. When the Supreme Personality of Godhead is met, the fullness of affection becomes manifested because of the reality of the affectionate relationship. He is not the object of affection because of some material tinge of body and mind, but he is the full, naked, uncontaminated object of affection for all living entities, because he is the super soul or the Paramatma within everyone's heart. In the liberated state of affairs, the full-fledged affection of the Lord is awakened. We are looking for affection, and the super soul is right there with us. And why is the super soul there with us? Because of the relationship. Krishna doesn't need to stay with us in every species in our heart, but is there because of the relationship. And is waiting for us to turn towards him. As such, there is an unlimited flow of everlasting happiness without any fear of its being broken, as we experience here in the material world. The relationship with the Lord is never broken, and thus there is no grief and no fear. Grief and fear in every relationship exists in the material world. Why? Because you are in the material world. With Krishna, there is no grief and there is no fear, because that relationship will never break. Just knowing that I am putting effort and energy into celebrating Janmashtami for the pleasure of Krishna, to develop a relationship with Krishna, and that relationship will never, ever break. How wonderful. And just knowing that that relationship is eternal and never going to break, no grief, no fear. When that relationship starts to mature more and more and more, becomes deeper and deeper, how sweet is that experience going to be? Such happiness is inexplicable by words, and there can be no possibility of generating such happiness by fruitive activities. So no amount of rituals, no amount of sense gratification will allow us to experience that relationship that we can have with Krishna. This is why pure devotees who have a relationship can give up everything in this material world. because that relationship is, as Prabhupada is explaining, inexplicable. It's just beyond words. As they say, out of the world. So it's truly out of the world. Being spontaneous, such happiness cannot be acquired through carefully arranged fruitive sacrifices. But we must also know that this happiness, the unbroken happiness exchange with the Supreme Person, the personality of Godhead, as described in this verse, transcends the impersonal conception of the Upanishads. In the Upanishads, the description is more or less negation of the material conception of things. But this is not a denial of transcendental senses of the Supreme Lord. Herein, the Lord's transcendental senses are affirmed by the word Suddham, uncontaminated, which indicates that the senses of the personality of Godhead are not made of material elements, but are all transcendental, free from any contamination of material identification. And the liberated soul also possesses spiritual senses. Both the Supreme Lord and the liberated souls must have senses. Otherwise, there could not be any reciprocation of unhampered spiritual happiness exchanged between them in spontaneous, unbroken joy. All the senses, both of the Lord and of the devotees, are without material contamination. They are so because they are beyond the material cause and effect, as clearly mentioned here in Sad Asata Param. When we begin the practice of Krishna consciousness, we use our material senses and engage our material senses, both gross and subtle, in the service of Krishna. But the soul also has its own senses. So the more we practice Krishna consciousness and the more we become Krishna conscious, our spiritual form is manifesting again, coming to its original nature. And we begin to practice Krishna consciousness now even with our spiritual senses. And with all our senses, we begin to reciprocate and engage in a relationship with the Supreme Personality of God. The material senses, they become purified. They become spiritualized. And the soul senses become reactivated. Eventually, when you become pure, you now resume your spiritual form with your vibrant spiritual senses and engage in that relationship with the Supreme. The illusory material energy cannot work there. Being ashamed before the Lord and his transcendental devotees. In the material world, the sense activities are not without grief. But here it is clearly said that the senses of the Lord and the devotees are without any grief. There's a distinct difference between the material and spiritual senses. And one should understand it without denying the spiritual senses because of a material conception. The senses in the material world are surcharged with material ignorance. In every way, the authorities have recommended purification of the senses from the material conception. In the material world, the senses are manipulated for individual and personal satisfaction. Whereas in the spiritual world, the senses are properly used for the purpose for which they were originally meant, namely, satisfaction of the Supreme. Everything, Haritoshanam, everything is meant for giving pleasure to Krishna. The whole creation, all the energies, all your facilities, your body, your mind, your words, your intellect, are all meant for the satisfaction of Krishna, including you. You are also meant for Krishna. But because of this separatist mentality, this exploitative mentality, you are now giving pleasure to yourself, individual or personal satisfaction. When we understand that we are here to give pleasure to Krishna, then we begin to revive our spiritual senses. Such sensual activities are natural, and therefore, sense gratification, and therefore sense gratification there is uninterrupted and unbroken by material contamination, because the senses are spiritually purified. And such satisfaction of the senses is equally shared by the transcendental reciprocators. Since the activity is unlimited and constantly increasing, there is no scope for material attempts or artificial arrangements. Since the activities are unlimited and constantly increasing, there is no scope for material attempts or artificial arrangements. Such happiness of transcendental quality is called Brahma Sokyam, which will be clearly described in the 5th canto. The beauty of the spiritual world, as Prabhupada is indicating, is that there is no shortage of activities to give pleasure to your senses in relation to Krishna. And more so is that every activity that gives pleasure to the senses, spiritual senses in the spiritual world, is constantly increasing. Why do people in the material world engage in an activity again and again and again? Because they want that pleasure again and again and again, and they want more of that pleasure again and again and again. Why do people want more? You ask the most wealthiest person, what do you want? More. You ask the person who's enjoying sense gratification, drugs, etc. What do you want? What do you want? More. Why? They really proclaiming what is deep within their spiritual nature, what exists in that relationship in the spiritual world. And that is that in the spiritual world, there are unlimited activities and ever-increasing pleasure, which we do not find in the material world. And therefore, no amount of material sense enjoyment, no amount of material relationships, no amount of material activities will satisfy the living entity. And you can see it. Just look at ourselves. This is not our first life. We've been here during the Chut again and again and again. Practically since time immemorial. We cannot count how many times we've been through it. We had every species that we can think of, every form of body we can think of. We went through every form of relationships we can think of. We went through every form of activity in every strata of the universe. We've been through it. And yet, we're not happy. We're not truly satisfied. Why? Because that's the nature of the material world. It is not an environment conducive for the living entity, like a fish out of water. Give it whatever you desire, and the fish will never be happy until it's placed into water. So until we do not cultivate a relationship with Krishna, until we don't revive that relationship with Krishna, we will continue suffering, choking, miserable in this material. 48. Sadriyanyamya yatayo yamakartahetim yayu swaradit eva nipana kanitram indra. In such a transcendental state, there is no need of artificial control of the mind, mental speculation or meditation, as performed by the jnanis and yogis. One gives up such processes as the heavenly king Indra forgoes the trouble to dig a well. So here we find very, very wonderfully the glory of devotional service, the glory of bhakti, the glory of reviving our relationship with Krishna. Because devotional service, bhakti means activity of the heart, engagement of the heart in relation with Krishna. A poor man in want of water undertakes the trouble of digging a well. Similarly, those who are poor in transcendental realization speculate with the mind or meditate by controlling the senses. But they do not know that such control of the senses and achievement of spiritual perfection are simultaneously made possible as soon as one is factually engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Supreme Person, the personality of Godhead. Let's just ponder on this point. There are processes like Jnana Yoga, like meditation, Astanga Yoga. But by engaging in the process of Bhakti Yoga, we automatically achieve the result of every other yoga. This also implies, for example, in Jnana Yoga, you're using your intelligence. In Astanga Yoga, you're using your mind and your senses. In Bhakti Yoga, you use all these senses perfectly in relation with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And you achieve a greater result that the other processes cannot give without devotion. Therefore, it's complete, it's comprehensive, and it's the most perfect. But they do not know that such control of the sense of achievement of spiritual perfection are simultaneously made possible as soon as one is factually engaged in transcendental service of the Supreme Person, Personality of God. It is for this reason that the great liberated souls desire to associate for hearing and chanting the activities of the Lord. The example of Indra is very appropriate in this connection. King Indra of heaven is the controlling deity or demigod for arranging clouds and supplying rain in the universe. And as such, he does not have to take the trouble to dig a well for his personal water supply. For him, digging a well for water supply is simply ludicrous. Similarly, those who are factually engaged in loving service of the Lord have attained the ultimate goal of life. And for them, there is no need of mental speculation to find out the true nature of God or his activities. Nor do such devotees have to meditate upon imaginary or real identity of the Lord, because they are factually engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. The Lord's pure devotees have already achieved the result of mental speculation and meditation. The real perfection of life is therefore to be engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. And following Srila Prabhupada's footsteps, under his guidance, under his instructions, because he is serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By us serving him, we are serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And therefore, there is no need for any other activity. The process of devotional service, transcendental loving service, is complete and perfect. And it includes the benefit, the result of every other process. 49. Shashreyasam api vibhu bhagavan yatosya bhava swabhava vihitasya shata prasiddhi dehe swadatu vigamenu vishiryamane vyomeva tatra purushona vishiryateja. The personality of Godhead, who is the supreme master of everything, auspicious, because of the results of whatever actions are performed by the living entities in either the material or spiritual existence, are awarded by the Lord. As such, he is the ultimate benefactor. Every individual living entity is unborn, and therefore, even after the annihilation of the material elementary body, the living entity exists exactly like the sky within the body. The living entity is unborn and eternal, as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 2:30. The living entity is not exhausted, even when the material elementary body is vanquished. As long as the living entity is in material existence, actions performed by him are rewarded in the next life, or even in the present life. Similarly, in his spiritual life also, the Lord rewards his actions by giving him the 5 kinds of liberation. Even the impersonalists cannot achieve the desired merging into the existence of the Supreme without being favored by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 4:11 that the Lord awards the results according to what one desires in one's present life. The living entities are given freedom to make their choice, and the Lord awards them accordingly. In many places, Srila Prabhupada would make the statement that we fell from the spiritual platform due to desire, and we can return to the spiritual platform due to desire. It is simply desire that can allow us to associate with matter or spirit. So if it's based on one action, one activity, one foundation, and that foundation is desire. So if we want to fall into Maya, just associate with those who have those desires. And if you want to go back and associate with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then simply associate with those that have desire. And you'll make advancement. And that is why, again, it is stressed that be careful who you associate with, because desire will rub off. By association, we acquire desire, or we intensify desire. Now, Prabhupada is making the point in this paragraph that in the material world, according to your desire, you get awarded. Similarly, on the spiritual platform also, according to your aspiration and desire, you get awarded. You get awarded the 5 kinds of liberation. You get awarded the different relationships. So it is dynamic in both ways. It's amazing how people sometimes they say, I don't know why I'm getting this. I mean, I didn't decide. I didn't ask for it. Yes, you did. You get what you deserve and desire. That's the law. In Shri Upanishad, there's a statement that the Supreme Lord has the service to fulfill the desire of the living entity eternally. It's like a father. Father's duty is to fulfill the desire of a child. If the father loves to give those which are auspicious, he's happy to give. When the child wants something inauspicious, he's forced to give. But no matter what, he has to fulfill the desire of the child. So Krishna also, he fulfills the material desires and he fulfills spiritual desires. Therefore, we constantly pray to the Lord, revealing our desires, that yes, my Lord, I don't want these material desires. And yes, my Lord, I want these spiritual desires. That's the relationship. As we advance, and then our true identity is revived, our desires will change accordingly. So we need to constantly pray to the Lord to please allow us to engage in his devotional service. Please keep us in the association of advanced devotees. Allow us to develop a taste for the holy name, etc. Prabhupada continues. It is a duty of everyone, therefore, to worship devoutly only the personality of Godhead to achieve his desired goal. When you understand these truths, then you stop beating around the bush. If you know you are an eternal servant of Krishna, then just serve Krishna. Stop going shopping. Stop trying different things because you're just simply wasting time. But to come to that realization, as Lord Brahma has already told Narad Muni in the previous chapters, that you can only come to that realization when you have the mercy of Krishna. Otherwise, it's very difficult. Even to just come to that understanding that I'm a devotee of Krishna, I'm a servant of Krishna, I need to serve Krishna, full stop. It's like you find so many during Janmashtami, so many people come to the temple on Janmashtami. They would not come any other time, but they would definitely come Janmashtami. And it's a wonderful opportunity to catch those souls. But one needs to be very expert to be able to capture those souls, to slowly reel them in. Because the fact that they came means that they have a relationship. But that relationship only becomes active once a year. Yes, there may be those who have a cultivating relationship and they know about the relationship, but many souls, oh, it's Krishna Janmashtami, let's go to the temple, get some mercy. It is not consistent, it is not constant. So here Prabhupada is saying we need to worship devoutly, completely, fully, dedicated. No other objective, no other goal. The impersonalists, instead of speculating or meditating, can directly execute the routine devotional service of the Lord and thus easily obtain the desired goal. So it's really a question of alignment. And there may be so many issues, traumatic experiences, baggage. There may be so much baggage that stops us from that alignment. And in some cases, yes, that baggage needs to be addressed. And if you got a heavy weight on your head and you say, Prabhu, just, it's okay, just run a mile. Don't worry, it's easy. Now I can't run a mile because I got this heavy thing on my head. I need to drop the heavy thing off my head before I can run. So like that, there may be those that have baggage. And without cleansing that baggage, without removing that baggage, it becomes very difficult to surrender. The devotees, however, are naturally inclined to become associates of the Lord and not merge into spiritual existence as conceived by the impersonalists. The devotees, therefore, following their constitutional instincts, achieve the desired goal of becoming servitors, friends, fathers, mothers, or conjugal lovers of the Lord. The devotional service of the Lord involves 9 transcendental processes such as hearing, chanting, and performing such easy and natural devotional services. The devotees achieve the highest perfectional result, far, far superior to merging into the existence of Brahman. The devotees are therefore never advised to indulge in speculating upon the nature of the Supreme or artificially meditating on the body. One should not, however, mistakenly think that after the annihilation of this present body, there is no body by which one can associate with the Lord face to face. The living entity is unborn. It is not that he is manifest with the creation of the material body. On the other hand, it is true that the material body develops only by the desire of the living entity. The evolution of the material body is due to desire of the living being. In other words, according to the desire of the living being, the material body develops. So, from a spirit soul, the material body comes into existence, generated from the living force. Since the living being is eternal, he exists just like the sky within the body. Sky is within and without the body. Therefore, when the external covering of the material body is vanquished, the living spark, like the sky within the body, it continues to exist. And by the direction of the Lord, because he is the ultimate benefactor, the living entity is at once awarded the necessary spiritual body befitting his association with the Lord in the manner of Surupya, features equal to the Lord, Salokya, facilities to live on the same planet as the Lord, Shastri, possession of opulence equal to the Lord, Samipya, personal association of the Lord. So the fifth one, Sayujya, is not accepted by the devotees, merging into the impersonal Brahmajyoti. Other four, that's generally accepted by the devotees. The Lord is so kind that even if a devotee of the Lord cannot fulfill the complete course of devotional service unalloyed and uncontaminated by material association, he is given another chance in the next life by being awarded a birth in a family of a devotee or rich man, so that without being engaged in the struggle of material existence, the devotee can finish the remaining purification of his existence and thus, immediately after relinquishing the present body, go back home, back to God. So here Prabhupada is also making it very, very clear. See, it's not automatic. Or the devotee died, Prabhupada is going back to Godhead. No, no, no. There is no automatic going back to Godhead. Yes, it's a nice sentiment. Somebody dies, or he's gone back to Godhead. We know that his situation is definitely better than the current. That's guaranteed. But what qualifies one to go back to Godhead? One is Prabhupada's mercy, Krishna's mercy. There is Kripa Siddhi. At a time of death, Prabhupada and Krishna can give you Kripa Siddhi and they can take you back to Godhead. That's guaranteed. But here Prabhupada is making very clear what are the qualifications. The Lord is so kind that even if a devotee of the Lord cannot fulfill the complete cause of devotional service, so there is a beginning and there is the end that we call completion. Like 0 beginning, 100% completion. If you have not completed your journey, it's not the end of the world, but it's definitely not the spiritual world. And what is that 100%? The 100% is unalloyed and uncontaminated by material association. Your devotional service is unalloyed and uncontaminated by material association. That means you are not engaging in devotional service in the mode of ignorance. You are not engaging in devotional service in the mode of passion. You are not engaging in devotional service in the mode of goodness. You are engaging in devotional service on the platform of Suddha Sattva, pure goodness, or Suddha Sattva. That means you are pure devotee. That is the qualification. So yes, we pray for mercy, but we endeavor for unalloyed, uncontaminated devotional service. That means we need to be serious. So it's not sometimes we make going back to Godhead very cheap and easy. Chant Hare Krishna and go back to God. And that's true. That there are statements by Srila Prabhupada. You chant 16 rounds nicely, you follow 4 principles, and you preach as best as you can, and you go back to God. And yes, if Prabhupada has marked you and has bestowed his mercy, then you can go back to God. But otherwise, it would depend on our effort. Some statements about going back to Godhead can be understood like this. So let's say Bafana Prabhu is here with me in my room, and I request Bafana Prabhu that can you please go to the shop to buy something, to buy some fruits. So I give him some Lakshmi, I give him a vehicle, he jumps into the vehicle and off he goes. And the shop is 30 minutes away from my house. Then my wife comes and she asks, where's Bafana Prabhu? And what am I going to reply? He's at the shop. He's gone to the shop. He's gone to the shop. Or he's gone shopping. Or he's at the shop. The implication is that he's on his way or at the shop, but he may just have left the home. So he's really not at the shop, but he just left home. But you say he's at shop. He's gone shop. He's shopping. He's buying some fruit. He's getting some fruit for us. Implication, he's at the shop. So sometimes we may say he's gone back to Godhead, but that's technically true, but he's just left the material world, which means it's on his way. He's not there yet. And on his way means he may go through some other destinations before he gets there. So that understanding is also. Whatever the destination is, firstly, nehabi kramo nasta asti. There is no loss or diminution on this path. Secondly, Prabhupada's mercy is no doubt available. Third, even if it takes 100 lifetimes to go back to Godhead, it is still glorious. The value of going closer to the spiritual realm can never be compared to anything in this material world. And the power of devotional service is so potent. The blessings of the disciplic succession, the mercy that is there, the guidance that is there, the gifts that Srila Prabhupada has given us to mold our life is so ample that any serious, sincere student can perfect his life. Those who are seriously, sincerely chanting, those who are seriously, sincerely engaging devotional service, those who are seriously, sincerely studying Prabhupada's books, and those who are seriously, sincerely avoiding offenses, and those who are seriously, sincerely engaging in devotional service, trying to help Srila Prabhupada's mission. The process will purify. So we should simply have faith in the process and engage sincerely and seriously in the process. We really need to convince ourselves of the process. The process should not become a burden. Like, getting up for Mangalarti becomes like, reading Prabhupada's books like, I've got some service to do. Which prasadam, no problem. Let's two plates will do. But we need to really develop a taste for these basic processes that Prabhupada has given us. And then the process will lead us. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. In this connection, a detailed information is available in Bhagavad Sandarbha of Srila Jiva Goswami Prabhupada. Once achieving the spiritual existence, the devotee is eternally situated there, as already discussed in the previous verse. 50. Soham te bihitas tata Bhagavan Vishwabhavana Samasena Harer Nanyad Anyashmat Sad Ashat Cha Yat. My dear son, I have now explained in brief the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the creator of the manifested worlds. Without him, Hari, the Lord, there are no other causes of the phenomenal and nominal existence. So Brahma is concluding, Krishna is a source of the material and spiritual worlds. Everything is emanating from him. So we generally have the experience of the temporary material world and conditioned souls trying to lord it over the material worlds. Brahmaji explained to Narad that this temporary world is the work of the external potency of the Lord, and that the conditioned souls struggling here for existence are the marginal potency of the Supreme, the personality of God. There is no cause for all these phenomenal activities but him, Hari, the Supreme Lord, who is the primal cause of all causes. This does not mean, however, that the Lord himself is distributed impersonally. He is aloof from all these interactions for the external and marginal potencies. In the Bhagavad Gita 9:4, it is confirmed that by his potencies alone, he is present everywhere and anywhere. everything is manifested, everything that is manifested rests upon his potency only. But he, as the supreme person of the Godhead, is always aloof from everything. The potency and the potent are simultaneously one and different from one another. One should not depreciate the Supreme Lord for the creation of this miserable world, just as one should not blame the king for creating the prison house in the government. The prison house is a necessary institution of the governmental establishment for those who are disobedient to the laws of the government. Similarly, this material world full of miseries is a temporary creation of the Lord for those who have forgotten him and are trying to lord it over false manifestations. He, however, is always anxious to get the fallen souls back home, back to Godhead. And for this, he has given so many chances to the conditioned souls via the authoritative scriptures, his representatives, and personal incarnations also. Since he has no direct attachment to the material world, he is not to be blamed for its creation. Sometimes people say, I don't believe in God because if God was there, we would not have this material world with all its suffering. Well, we cannot blame Krishna. The prison house only exists because of the prisoners. Otherwise, there is no need for the government to create a prison house. Well, similarly, Krishna doesn't need to create your creation if the living entities don't exist. On one hand, the living entities pastimes, but in relation to the prison house, it is because of the prisoners. Second point Prabhupada is making here is that Krishna is I was speaking about this point Prabhupada makes, that we should learn to capture Krishna. And then in another conversation, Prabhupada says, I've already captured Krishna, just take him. So we don't even then need to capture Krishna. Prabhupada already has captured Krishna for us. We just need to take him. Then Prabhupada says that we should be eager to capture Krishna, but Krishna is even more eager to be captured. We should be eager to take a step to Krishna, and Krishna is even 10 times more eager to take steps to us. So Krishna cannot wait for us to revive, to develop, to serve in that relationship. In Durban, one student asked the question, because I made the point that we are all totally insignificant. We are like 1/10,000 tip of the hair. Out of millions of souls that are in this material world, Prabhupada says like 10% are in the material world. And this is Krishna's quarter creation. So we're practically insignificant and has so many, unlimited. Then what's the use? And I made the point that Prabhupada in his purports makes it very clear that each living entity is unique. We are individuals and we all have a unique personality. And because we are individuals and we are unique in our personality, we all have a unique to accept that unique offering from every living entity. Even though that unique offering is coming through the disciplic succession and not directly. So therefore, even though every living entity is Satchit Ananda, made up of the same quality, but each one is a unique individual personality. 51. Idam Bhagavatam Nama Yanme Bhagavato Ditam Sangraho Yam Vibhutinam Tvam Etad Vipulit Kuru. O Narada, the science of God, Srimad Bhagavatam, was spoken to me in summary by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and it was spoken as the accumulation of his diverse potencies. Please expand this science yourself. The Bhagavatam, in a nutshell, spoken by the Personality of Godhead, is about half a dozen verses, which will appear ahead in the science of God. Which will appear ahead is the science of God, and it is the potent representation of the Personality of Godhead. He, being absolute, is non-different from the science of God, Srimad Bhagavatam. Brahmaji received the science from Godhead, received the science of Godhead from the Lord directly, and he handed over the same to Narada, who in turn ordered Srila Vyasadeva to expand it. So the transcendental knowledge of the Supreme Lord is not mental speculation by the mundane wranglers, but is uncontaminated, eternal, perfect knowledge beyond the jurisdiction of the material modes. The Bhagavad Purana is therefore the direct incarnation of the Lord in the form of transcendental sound, and one should receive this transcendental knowledge from the bona fide representative of the Lord in the chain of disciplic succession from the Lord to Brahmaji, from Brahmaji to Narad, from Narad to Vyas, from Vyas to Sukadeva Goswami, from Sukadeva Goswami to Sutta Goswami, and so on. The ripened fruit of the Vedic desire tree drops from one hand to another without being broken by falling suddenly from a high branch down to earth. Therefore, unless one hears the science of Godhead from a bona fide representative of the disciplic succession as above mentioned, for one to understand the theme of the science of Godhead will be a difficult job. It should never be heard from the professional Bhagavatam reciters who earn their livelihood by gratifying the senses of the audience. So clearly we can understand the purpose. Srila Prabhupada is giving us Bhagavatam, is giving us the Bhaktivedanta purports, not to gratify our senses, not for mundane sense gratification, but for the purpose of developing our pure devotional service to Krishna. And the Bhagavatam is completely transcendental, completely pure. Therefore, every word, every syllable in the Bhagavatam is honored as Krishna, is accepted as transcendental. And the knowledge, as Prabhupada is saying here, is uncontaminated, eternal, and perfect, beyond the jurisdiction of material modes. That is an extremely exalted, elevated platform. That we have access to knowledge, firstly, that is eternal. That's not going to change. Knowledge that's uncontaminated. That means by us associating with this knowledge, it removes contamination. And knowledge that is perfect. How glorious, how wonderful. What good fortune that we have such wisdom in our hands. 52. Yataharo Bhagavati Harinam Bhaktir Bhavishyati Sarvatmanya Kiladare Iti Sankalpya Varnaya. Please describe the signs of Godhead with determination and in a manner by which it will be quite possible for the human being to develop transcendental devotional service under the personality of Hari. the supersoul of every living being, and the summum bonum source of all energies. Srimad Bhagavatam is the philosophy of devotional service and the scientific presentation of man's relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Prior to the age of Kali, there was no need for such a book of knowledge to know the Lord and his potencies, but with the beginning of the age of Kali, human society gradually became influenced by the four sinful principles, namely illegitimate connection, women, intoxication, gambling, and unnecessary killing of animals. Because of these basic sinful acts, man gradually became forgetful of his eternal relationship with God. Therefore, man became blind, so to speak, to the ultimate goal of life. The ultimate goal of life is not to pass a life of irresponsibility like the animals and indulge in a polished way in the four animal propensities, namely eating, sleeping, fearing, and mating. For such a blind human society in darkness of ignorance, Srimad Bhagavatam is the torchlight to see things in the proper perspective. Therefore, it was necessary to describe the signs of God from the very beginning or from the very birth of the phenomenal worlds. So Srimad Bhagavatam is the torchlight so that we can see very, very clearly. As we have already explained, Srimad Bhagavatam is so scientifically presented that any sincere student of this great science will be able to understand the science of God simply by reading it with attention or simply by regularly hearing it from a bona fide speaker. Everyone is hankering after happiness in life. But in this age, the members of human society, blind as they are, do not have the proper vision that the personality of Godhead is the reservoir of all pleasure, because he's the ultimate source of everything. Janmadya Seyata. Happiness is complete perfection without hindrance, can be achieved only by our devotional relationship with him. And it is only by his association that we can get free from the stressful material existence. Even those who are after the enjoyment of this material world can also take shelter of the great science of Srimad Bhagavatam, and they can be successful at the end. Narada is therefore requested or ordered by his spiritual master to present the science with determination and a good plan. Narada was never advised to preach the principles of Bhagavatam to earn a livelihood. He was ordered by his spiritual master to take the matter very seriously in a missionary spirit. We should also have the same understanding and spirit, that we want to propagate Krishna consciousness not as a livelihood, but simply as part of the mission to help souls, bring souls closer to the lotus feet of Srila Prabhupada and closer to lotus feet of Krishna. 53. Mayam varnayoto musya ishwarasyanu modata Shrinvata Shradaya Nityam Maya Yatma Namuyati. The Lord's activities in association with his different energies should be described, appreciated, and heard in accordance with the teachings of the Supreme Lord. If this is done regularly with devotion and respect, one is sure to get out of the illusory energy of the Lord. The science of learning a subject matter seriously is different from the sentiments of fanatics. Fanatics or fools may consider Lord's activities in relation with the eternal energy to be useless for them, and they may falsely claim to be higher participants in the internal energy of the Lord. But factually, the Lord's activities in relation with the external energy and the internal energy are equally good. On the other hand, those who are not completely free from the clutches of the Lord's external energy should devoutly hear regularly about the activities of the Lord in relation with the external energy. And this is why we find that the initial cantos are focusing so much energy in relation to Krishna and the material creation, because this is conducive for our growth. On the other hand, those who are not completely free from the clutches of the Lord's external energy should devoutly hear regularly about the activities of the Lord in relation with the external energy. They should not foolishly jump up to the activities of the Lord's internal energy, falsely attracted by such activities as Rasa Leela. The chief reciters of Srimad Bhagavatam are very much enthusiastic about the activities of the Lord's internal potencies, and the pseudo devotees, absorbed in material sense enjoyment, falsely jump to the stage of the liberated souls and thus fall down deeply into the clutches of the external energy. The pseudo devotees think that to hear about the pastimes of the Lord means to hear about his activities with the gopis and about his pastimes like lifting Govardhan Hill. And they have nothing to do with the Lord's plenary expansions as the Purusha avatars and their pastimes of creation, maintenance, and elation of the material worlds. But a pure devotee knows that there is no difference between the Lord's Rasa Leela pastimes and the pastimes of creation, maintenance, and destruction of the material world. Rather, the description of such activities of the Lord as those performed by the Purusha avatars are specifically meant for persons who are in the clutches of the external energy. Topics like the Rasa Leela are meant for the liberated souls and not for the conditioned souls. The conditioned souls, therefore, must hear with appreciation and devotion the Lord's pastimes in relation with external energy. And hearing such pastimes is as good as hearing Rasa Leela in the liberated stage. A conditioned soul should not imitate the activities of liberated souls. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu never indulged in hearing the Rasa Leela with ordinary men. The topics that conditioned souls therefore must hear with appreciation and devotion. The Lord's pastimes in relation with external energy, and hearing such pastimes is as good as hearing the Rasa Leela in the liberated stage. And we see Srila Prabhupada, he's commenting, he's extending and giving commentary on every verse in the Bhagavatam, even those that are related with the Purusha avatars, the material energy, for our benefit. So, no part of the Bhagavatam is given just to fill pages, just because there's nothing else to say. No, every single verse, every single syllable is there for a purpose, is there to mold and purify the conditioned souls. And therefore, we simply have to systematically go through, spend our time with focus, with appreciation, and with devotion. In Kali Yuga, even online, if we do not allow ourselves to be focused, we can get distracted. If, for example, if we have a live session, and now you come into the live session and you're sitting in front of the speaker, it's more difficult or not possible for you to fiddle around and to be distracted. You are more focused. Plus, the collective association is also powerful. The energy is powerful. Now, yes, for practical purposes, we obviously have it online, but at the same time, it behooves us to be focused and to spend the time so that we can benefit from the time spent associating with the Bhagavatam. And in this way, if we simply, sincerely go through, we will benefit. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Science of God, the first 9 cantos prepare the ground for hearing the 10th canto. This will be further explained in the last chapter of this canto. In the 3rd canto, it will be more explicit. A pure devotee of the Lord, therefore, must begin reading or hearing Srimad Bhagavatam from the very beginning and not from the 10th canto. Note, it says a pure devotee. If it's good for the pure devotee, then what to talk about us, conditioned souls? We have to start from the beginning of the beginning. Bhagavad Gita, Then go through Srimad Bhagavatam. We have several times have been requested by some so-called devotees, take up the 10 canto immediately. But we have refrained from such an action because we wish to present Srimad Bhagavatam as the science of Godhead, not as a sensuous understanding for the conditioned souls. This is forbidden by such authorities as Sri Brahmaji. By reading and hearing Srimad Bhagavatam as a scientific presentation, the conditioned souls will gradually be promoted to the higher status transcendental knowledge after being freed from the illusory energy based on sense enjoyment. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purports of the second canto, 17th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam entitled Scheduled Incarnations with Specific Functions. Vantrat Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Go Pramanande Hari Hari. Right, if there's any questions or comments, please type in the chat. So let's see, Bhaktivinoda Prabhu has posted few. Spirit soul proper civilization as opposed to material sense gratification, such a powerful lifetime changing statement broadcast the Srimad Bhagavatam so influenced. Akila Lokanath, Namdev, one whose name is worth chanting. 2. The elephant was conscious of his relation with the Lord. Both the Lord and all living entities are enjoyed, but the Lord is Purusha, supreme enjoyer. Shravana Mangala receives everything auspicious simply by hearing the holy name of the Lord. And Namdev, one whose name is worth chanting. So Akila Lokanath must be both the Lord and living entities enjoyed, but the Lord is Purusha enjoy. So different names Bhafana is sharing. Namdev, one whose name is worth chanting. I've learned to appreciate the spirit so proper, does not lose the identity, and it is by its relationship with the Lord flourish in comparison with impersonalist view that one becomes merged in Brahman and the identity disappears. But my spiritual identity so proper flourishes by development, by its devotion, loving service to the unlimited Lord. It continues, yes. Even when the spirit soul merges into Brahman, that merging into Brahman is not an extinguishing or dissolving of the identity of the living entity. He is merging, yet he stays individual in that mergence. The example is given of a green tree. A green bird goes into the green tree, but the bird merges with the greenness of the tree, but does not lose its identity. What happens is exactly with the living entity. The living entity goes, merges with the Brahman. He also becomes, if he's also effulgent, the Brahman is also effulgent. There's oneness in that sense. But because there is no devotional service, he becomes agitated. And then when that agitation is there, he's disturbed and he immediately falls. So no mergence, no dissolving of identity. Then you mentioned during Janmashtami, in association with His Holiness Bhakti Chaitanya Maharaj twice, did he make serious emphasis that in, for example, community of cockroaches or the elephants, none of each one is similar to the other on the basic of their individual identity. In other words, they are not the same, but all have an unique individual identity, a rich unique identity in relation to the super soul and Paramatma. This goes to all living entities. So revolutionizing and glorious to hear that. Yes. Similar point that I made is we're all unique. Even though we all have the same quality, every living entity is unique. And that is special because now it means you are special in relation to Krishna. And you can now understand why Krishna is also greedy for that service. He wants that service. He's making so many arrangements, as Prabhupada says. He sends scripture, the living entity, to the living entities. Pure devotee comes. He appears himself just to bring us these lotus. Hemavati Radhikas, thank you for these Srimad Bhagavatam classes. They're wonderful. We're so grateful for you for taking your time, inspiring us in our Krishna consciousness. Hare Krishna. In a wonderful way. Thank you very much for your association online as well. Mother Archana Siddhis Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you so much for the very inspiring and enriching class. It is my pleasure. Shamananda Prabhu says, thanks for Maharajan Prabhu, continue Srimad Bhagavatam Nectar. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much for everyone's association. We had a beautiful, enriching spiritual time in Durban. We are already booked for next year. So it is wonderful to and be absorbed and see the devotees also very nicely engaged. Prabhupada's His Holiness Parthasati Das Goswami was saying when they started Krishna consciousness there, Durban, there were 6 devotees. Now, during Vyasa Puja, that temple room was packed. Thousands of, 2,000 initiated devotees, thousands of other devotees. So the movement is expanding. And Prabhupada has given us such glorious teachings, wisdom, process. We simply have to embrace it wholeheartedly, apply it in our life, digest it, assimilate it, live it, and then share it. This way, perfect ourselves and help perfect others. Thank you very much. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gop Pramanande Hari Hari. Lakota says, Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you for the mind-blowing class as usual. I'm already curious about the nectar of the volume 10, but I hold back my curiosity. Yes, well, you can. So Prabhupada is interesting. Prabhupada gave us the 10th canto. It was the 5th book that Prabhupada gave the world. And how did he give it? He gave the 10th canto, even though it's interesting, the Bhagavatam, Prabhupada is emphasizing go systematically through all the cantos, but Prabhupada in his genius, ability, gave the 10th canto with Hare Krishna of the Shushila. He gave the 10th canto with commentary, explanation, clarification, and philosophy blended around the pastimes of Krishna. So then when one reads the 10th canto, Prabhupada is very, very expertly guiding the living entity so he doesn't go off track. So that means we can still and should still read the 10th canto called Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And while we're reading the 10th canto, let us continue proceeding systematically. However long it takes, let us proceed. Obviously on your own, you can also read ahead, but in this series, we simply will continue however long Krishna. Thank you. Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.